Welcome to this podcast on SWOOP's Voice of the Customer. While we now have an extensive library of case studies from our SWOOP clients, we felt that hearing their actual voices can provide a complementary, rich and convenient experience. We have been indeed fortunate to hear our customers speak of SWOOP in public forums and in interviews. In this podcast, we have collated a tapestry of voices along some of the recurring themes of SWOOP usage. These themes are how SWOOP is used to influence CEO and C-suite behaviours, how SWOOP has been used to influence behaviours across the enterprise, how SWOOP provides value to all staff and not just the leadership, how SWOOP has been used to help prove the business case for enterprise social, and finally, how SWOOP has been used to help amplify key messages across the enterprise. Before we start, we acknowledge the voices from Ageas, Bankwest, Diageo, Griffith University, My NRMA, NBN Co, Real Foundations, Syngenta, Telstra, and the Union for Reform Judaism. Let's get underway with how SWOOP has been used to influence the CEO and C-suite behaviours.
So one thing that we did to get our leaders on board once we had Yammer for about a year and a half, we first implemented SWOOP, and then we could benchmark all our leaders against each other to see who was doing better in Yammer, who wasn't on Yammer yet, etc. So we went to our Global Leadership Conference, which is where all our leaders gather once a year. There's 180 of these leaders. We printed out this league table really big at the leadership conference, so leaders could come up and they could see where they were ranked. And there was one particular leader that was very active, and he was doing a lot of Yam Jams. He was sharing a lot of the information with his team only on Yammer. Yeah, this one here.
Seamless.
And then, so we posted that, and we also posted these personalities which you get with SWOOP, which I'm sure SWOOP will talk more about later. But we posted some of the conversations as well. That's not on this slide. Some of the successful conversations that leaders were having. But what they were most interested in was looking at this league table, and they would come up to us and they would say, well, actually, how can I beat him? And they all thought that, I'm just going to start posting every single day now. But actually, it's not about if you're just sending loads of posts out there. It's all based on engagement. So the conversation we could then have with them was like, might be a great way for you to engage your teams if you start talking about this, or if you start having your town hall questions there, if you start doing Yam Jams, if you start praising people. So it really allowed us to have that conversation with them. This is how you can not just use Yammer better, but be better communicators with your teams.
The work that we did around personas, and the reason we were really keen on that was we found it really hard to explain to leaders what good looked like in social in a way that they could understand and how they could get better. So what were the steps that they could do? And we found this was a really fantastic way by talking about these personas and to be able to sit with a leader with a SWOOP dashboard and take them through and tell them the story of what they're doing and some of the things that they find really effective can be the most effective conversation that you can have. So, we would often sit there and look at someone's personal dashboard and really focus on things like their network map. And we would explain how, a network map can really show them who they're connecting with throughout the business. Then we would take a topic that they talked about or a particular focus we knew they had and look at it in terms of a topic profile, or maybe it's a group profile, and we could actually start to tell this really beautiful story about this is what happened, here is who said it, this is how it went throughout, this is how it travelled throughout the business, look, you got this area, but we didn't see any conversation around here. And it just brought to life for them how information could be shared, how they could see where they needed to fill gaps, and that became a really effective tool.
And that can give you very granular information on content and also how individuals use the platform and how they're interacted with. It's a new kind of thing, and we showed our CEO some stats on it a couple of weeks ago. His immediate response was to get on the platform and create a post. It was a really simple post. It was about 20 words, and it basically said, tell me what's on your mind. Ask me a question. A post from Bill hit a score of 820. It broke it. And people engaged with it, and it was all a result of putting some numbers in front of Bill's face. metrics really, really matter.
One of the key things I'm always thinking is how can I get stakeholders engaged? And one of the beautiful things with SWOOP is I can go in and talk to people. I'm not just talking about the kind of what a lot of senior business leaders in particular see as the nice to have. I can go in and talk to them about engaging their people and connecting with their people in meaningful ways. But with SWOOP, what I can do is actually show them what that looks like. And that's where the magic happens. When I sit down in a room and I say, hey, before I get into talking about the behaviours that you should display in your ESN, let's look at what data we can actually access. And I can see their eyes light up. It's such a powerful tool. So I love having SWOOP. And so when I'm able to then turn around and say, hey, let's take a look at this SWOOP dashboard and let's drill into the data that we can actually see how our people are behaving, how they're interacting, and who our key influencers are, who our top engagers are, what people are engaging with, how they're engaging with that content. It's just such a powerful tool for those senior stakeholders.
Started with SWOOP, one of the key things that we used it for was for competition. At Syngenta, we're very competitive. We want to get the job done. So utilizing the analytics in SWOOP to pair leaders against others, say, hey, look, this person over here is doing way better than you are on Yammer. You need to get your activity up. So we've used it in that sense.
You guys have had a lot to do with this for us, really, SWOOP, because we push the analytics and we grab it out of SWOOP super quick, at an enterprise level, and then at that CEO update group level, and it's, I guess, I'm assuming immediately it's gratifying for them because they can see how many people are looking, how many people are engaged, responding, and they can see this sort of spider webbing effect of how that communication has infiltrated the organisation, which previously you couldn't see that.
We hear a lot today about organisational change and digital disruption. The common theme for success has been regularly framed as changing behaviours, and SWOOP clients have been using measurement and benchmarking to achieve this.
Sure. So at World Foundations, we do twice a year reviews, performance reviews. And an input to that, since we've been customers of SWOOP now for 2 years, has been SWOOP benchmarking. So we benchmark everybody in the organization against their peers for purposes of the review cycle. And we really have different expectations for different levels within our organization. So an advisor would give feedback such as, at your level, you sort of rank in the middle or high among your peer group. Certainly there are probably some not so great conversations about you're a senior leader in this company, and we would expect you to be more participating more, sharing your knowledge.
And then we get to the metrics. Now, we just started using SWOOP about a few weeks ago. And for us, we've already seen the success. So SWOOP is a great tool that gives you better insight. So what SWOOP does is make you go into more detail. So we'll be able to look at Exco and see how they use the platform, for example. And this helped us by giving the metrics to our Exco members. We saw a change in their behavior. And
in terms of the personas, everybody knows that. And one of the things I want to flash up here is overall what we found was about 40% of our those 821 were observers, 1% were broadcasters, 23% responders, and 13% were catalysts, and 23% were engagers. Now, pop quiz, which of those personas is most likely to get the highest marks? The engager. Yeah. And guess what? That's what happened, right? And so it's not like you can't get the highest marks if you're an observer, but you're more than likely to get the highest marks if you're an engager. Education is an engagement sport.
The majority of analytic tools are used only by the analysts and their internal customers, the executive. SWOOP has been designed to be inclusive of every employee. We are therefore gratified that many of our clients are using SWOOP in this way.
That how Swoop has transformed our Yammer analytics. And I say that with a smile on my face, but it's absolutely true. Swoop has worked wonders for us in terms of just being able to get data and information and insights from our Yammer network that we couldn't get before, or if we could, it was incredibly complicated to get. Swoop has just made those insights so much more accessible, and every time I share it, I've told you this before, Kai, but every time I share Swoop with an employee or with perhaps one of our leaders, they look at it and they're like, wow, this is incredible, the amount of information that I can get just from clicking a couple of different reports. So
I think they get jealous that some of the external channels and other tools don't have as good analytics as Swoop does.
The other thing that we did that really got a lot more people on Yammer and keeps people there today is we implemented SWOOP, which is an analytical tool. So everyone in our organisation can look at their own Yammer activity, that of their leaders, that of their teams. They can use SWOOP to search through popular conversations to see what people are saying about a particular topic, and we can really use it to see exactly when we are losing momentum or getting dropped off. We can see exactly what we need to concentrate on. So one of the key analytics that we actually look at with SWOOP is engagement level, and we always want our engagement to be around 35%. And so as soon as that drops off, we can investigate very, very easily. Okay, people are stopping to engage so much on Yammer, what can we do to try and get people back there? And then we can talk to our leaders about maybe doing a Yam Jam there, or we can open up some discussions with the community managers of certain groups, or we do another campaign where we put forward some use cases.
But more so than that, it provides the ability for leaders, whether it's the CEO or the executive or any leadership level below that, to have immediate and broad feedback, which is also an extremely powerful feature of the platform itself, and the ability to measure. And NBN Co is driven by numbers and by measurements and by targets, and now to a certain degree, at least on our digital commerce platform, we can measure and we can benchmark as a result. And SWOOP really has been the catalyst for us to be able to drive those measurements through our leadership community and keep them engaged that way.
Channel that was what we had before.
I think you're using SWOOP as well.
We are, so in terms of the analytics, so that we can really understand the nature. I mean, what comes out of the box with that place is great if you want to kind of capture and quantify how many people are using which groups, but if you want to get a deeper understanding of the nature of that engagement and the groups, and more importantly, how the connections are happening across the organisation, then you do need a more detailed tool, and for us that was SWOOP.
Cool, thanks.
A regular concern for those implementing an enterprise social platform is being able to prove the business case. Here's what some of our clients have to say about how SWOOP has helped.
Something that we can actually use SWOOP to do as well, because we can look at the posts that have had the most engagement, and usually those posts are around a question. IT question as well, you can go to IT and say, oh, this isn't working for me, does anybody else have this issue? And then immediately someone comes back to you with an answer, someone that's either from IT or got an interest in IT, and that means that you don't have to spend time raising a ticket or calling them, and that saves money, and you can put a cost against that at the end of the quarter when you unearth these types of posts, which you can do with SWOOP. We can go to our leadership team and say, okay, this month this is how much Yammer actually saved us because we got answers really, really quickly, or we were sharing resources, or we were sharing knowledge.
Really, it's about how we've used the maturity model and used that as a way to help explain to execs the questions that we get around our network. Why have we got Texas Bank West? Why have we got these different social groups? And we've used that to help explain how they really make significant difference to us on the maturity model.
So SWOOP is a key part of this success, and we evaluate our network every week. We evaluate it every month. Every month we provide to the leadership of our organization a base set of analytics about how our networks have performed, both our external and our internal networks. How many posts have there been? How many replies? How many likes? How has that changed from month to month? And so over a period of time, and we could go back a number of years now, we can really see how our network activity has exponentially grown.
That sense, also to help build the case. Some of the data that you guys provide in your analytics really helps us build that business case and show the business proposition for it.
Okay. Finally, enterprise social platforms are flooded with content. How can we make sure that the most important messages are cutting through to their intended audiences? Many of our clients have discovered innovative ways to leverage SWOOP to help do this.
And then also around how we've used things like hashtags in our campaigns, and thanks to things like the stats, we're able to see those echoes. So we use a particular hashtag that we did for a cultural campaign, and that then kept echoing through all of our other campaign activity. If people like it, not only do they like it on Yammer, they actually start using the hashtags in their replies, and really building that engagement.
And week to week, I share the top posts of the week with all of our staff. And because so much of those posts touch on so much of the work that we do. And it's an interesting thing, a helpful thing, to see what kind of posts really engage our users. And not only what kinds of posts, but what is the work that we do now that really speaks to our users on the external network as well. And SWOOP is a key part of us being able to provide that information.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. To find out more about how our customers are using SWOOP, you will find our case study library and benchmarking studies at www.swoopanalytics.com.